INDIANA, that's Indiana. Ballin' like Reggie Miller, that's Indiana. I put up on my state, that's Indiana. Watch me rep it in your face, that's Indiana. That's Indiana, that's Indiana.
Hi, it's Matt from Ludovox, and I am today at GenCon 2016 with Andrew on Stronghold Games. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, how are you, Matt?
I'm fine. What about you?
I'm doing great. This is another great con this year.
So it's not your first?
It is not. Nope, I have been to GenCon for 4 years now.
Okay, and you are demoing a game which is Terraforming Mars by Freaks Games.
Yes, I am.
So, how many players can play this?
This actually is an interesting game because it can play 1 to 5 players.
Is it cooperative then?
It is in the sense that you're all going towards the same goal. So you're trying to make Mars livable by raising the temperature, having enough oxygen, and having enough water on Mars.
But is there one victor or more than one victor?
We're all corporations, so unfortunately only one victor.
Okay, and so 1 to 5 players, how long does it last?
It lasts about an hour and a half to 2 hours, but again, each generation could be multiple turns.
And is it a game for gamers that are, I don't know, aged 12 plus maybe?
It could be. It looks very complicated as you look at it, but it's very simple to play once you get a couple generations under your belt.
So 10 maybe?
You could do that. Mm-hmm.
And what is the object of the game? So you told a bit about it, make Mars livable?
Yes, the object of the game is to make Mars livable, but it's all about the victory points at the end. So the corporation with the most victory points wins.
Okay, and how do we earn victory points?
You earn victory points in a couple different ways. You have victory points from your track here. You get different terraforming as you're putting stuff on Mars. You also get victory points from having milestones reached or awards.
Okay, what happens in a typical player turn? What do we do? What choices do we have?
Okay, in a typical player turn, you have multiple options. Obviously, in the first generation, you're limited because you don't have many resources. So in the first turn, what we usually do is you'd play a card to gain more production, or you would play one of these standard projects, which allow you to do one of these different options here.
So do we have a hand of cards, or is it just a deck that we draw through?
You get, to start, we're all standard or beginning corporations here. So we each get 42 money, and we each get 10 cards for free. So I already have dealt out 10 cards to each of us. And what's going to happen is you're going to look through your cards. On each of the cards, there are 3 types. I have green, blue, and red. Green cards are ones that you're going to pay the cost, which is in the upper left-hand corner, and the requirement. This one requires you to have one each of these science tags, and you play the card out, and that's one action. Blue cards are actions you can use once each generation. So I play the cost, and then I take one of my player cubes and place it on the card and activate that action once each generation. Lastly, you have event cards, which you pay for, do the effect, and you're going to turn them over.
You talked about generations. So is it another term for a turn, or is it a phase of the game?
Generations are like a phase in the game. Each generation can be multiple turns because each player gets up to 2 actions each turn, and we keep going around until everyone passes.
Then, sorry. What about these generations? How do they fit in the end game? When does the game end?
The game ends when we get to a livable, breathable Mars. So we get to +8 here on the temperature track, plus 14% oxygen, and we have 9 tiles placed for water tiles.
Okay, once all of these 3 objectives are completed, it's the end. And so, the turn ends and apparently we start counting victory points.
Right. You finish the generation you're in, and then you would start counting victory points, yes.
Okay, and do we get to draw new cards?
Yes. After each generation is done, you go through a production phase. So how that works is, depending upon your player board here, you notice that you have a couple different spaces here. So on your player board, you have your different pieces showing how much production of each thing you have. So you start out at 1, so at the end of the generation, you produce. So money is determined by your terraforming rating, so we started at 20, plus your production, which in this case is 1. So at the end of generation, you would get 21 money to start the next generation. Next, you would go to your next card. This is a 1. So I produce 1 resource of this type and go around producing resources. Once you get to energy, though, that's different. What energy you have produced down here is going to move and turn into heat, and then you're going to produce energy normally. And on your player board, it gives you different options as well. Some of the cards have different tags that I mentioned before at the top of them. If you have resources here and a card you have has one of those tags, you can trade resources for money to pay the cost for the card.
Very nice. So we can build cities that give us tags, I guess. How do they work? How do we build a city or a forest? Do we have special rules? Is it just these?
So for building those, there are cards that allow you to do it, but another way to do it is with your resources. So once you have on your card 8 plants, you can trade those in for an action and place a greenery tile. So you would take one of these tiles and place it anywhere that does not have a blue space where the water tiles go, or is not one of these 3 reserved cities. So you would take your tile, you would place it, take your player color, put it on top, and whatever's underneath it, you would gain that resource. So for example, I put it here, so I would gain 1 plant resource on my player board.
So, okay, I was going to ask about those because obviously they have 2 plants, and I was wondering. What about those? Do we have a special event when the temperature cube moves here?
Yes, the first person to raise the temperature to that level is going to get a bonus. Okay. So in this case, if they move it to this level, they're going to get a production bonus in heat. So on their player board, they would move their production 1 in the heat production. Okay. Yes.
And what do these actions do, the basic actions?
These are called standard projects, and the way these work is you have cards in your hand, and sometimes you can't play them because they cost too much or you don't meet the global parameters for them. So this is another way to do that. The first one, for each card you take and discard, you get 1 money for it. So if you need money, that's a good way to do that. For another action, you can pay 11 money, and you can get 1 production in energy. For 14, you can raise the temperature 1 spot. For 18, you can place a water tile. For 23, you can place a greenery tile. And for 25, you can place a city, and you get 1 production increased of your money. And each of those is 1 action. And doing anything that affects the temperature, the oxygen, or placing a water tile also gives you a terraforming rating, which adds to the amount of money you get at the end of each generation.
So the terraforming rating, is it like victory points?
Yes, it is. It's like victory points, but more importantly, it's money you earn after every generation.
What about the stars here? I wonder what they are.
Okay, the stars, as you look at your player board here, have different symbols on them. So the stars correspond here to this symbol, which, if I can show you here, on the tags, you have cards that have that symbol. Okay. So for example, if I had resources here, I could spend those resources for 3 coins apiece towards the cost of this card. Okay. So if I place my tile on one of those spaces, I would get 1 of those resources generated immediately.
Okay, so you can build orbital stations or so, well, that kind of thing.
Correct, yes. This board and placing tiles work together so you can do more things every turn. Because you might run out of money early, and this might be the only way to pay for cards.
Okay, Andrew, I think we've covered quite a few things on the game. So thank you for your time, and see you on Ludovox. Bye!
Bye.
INDIANA, that's Indiana. Ballin' like Reggie Miller, that's Indiana. I put on for my state, that's Indiana.